Good evening, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California with Gavin Newsom's book, Young Man in a Hurry, a memoir of discovery. We are on page 31, I think. Yes. The drive from Corte Madera to San Francisco across the Golden Gate Bridge took 30 minutes on a good day. The city was near enough that even as a kid in the thrall of Mount Tam, I never stopped regarding San Francisco as the place that had shaped the destinies of 4 generations of Newsoms and would do the same for me. I moved in between I moved between its flagrant worlds of rich and poor and hardly thought it remarkable. No one on either side of the divide, not those who lived in the stone castles of Nob Hill, not those who slept in the flop houses of the Tenderloin, ever accused me of trespassing. When I crossed over into the Marina District, where my Newsom grandparents lived in what looked to my eyes to be a 3-story palace, I did so in the most casual manner. It was a wonder how effortlessly I glided because the two realms of my life, the characters of my mother's world and the characters of my father's world, did not fit together in the least. The starkness of this crossing must have first occurred to me in the context of our relationship with the Gettys, one of the wealthiest families in the world. As early as 7 years old, I had a sense that the Newsoms had been tied to the Gettys for a long time, though I wasn't sure exactly how. Were we distant cousins? Did the two clans sail on the boat together from Hibernia at the shout of California gold? One Christmas season, when Hillary and I were quite young, our father took us shopping at our favorite toy store just off Chestnut Street in the San Francisco's Marina. I had no special gift in mind, but Hillary had her heart set on a new pair of pink Barbie high heels that clicked when she walked. Before we turned onto Chestnut, Dad made a detour to pick up his godson, Eugene Paul Getty II. Paul, to us, who had just arrived in the city after surviving a gruesome kidnapping in Italy that made international news. The boy was 17 years old, nearly a man, but my father but, uh, believed that after what he'd been through, an outing to the toy store might be in order. Paul was waiting for us on the steps of a house, and as we pulled up, Dad admonished us for a second time. Now, whatever you guys do or say, all I'm asking is that you don't mention Paul's missing ear. As best as I as best I remember, Paul didn't look like the spoiled brat, rotten child whose wild party nights had become fodder for the European tabloids. His red hair was curly and touched his back, and he wasn't wearing the tight bell bottoms and loud unbuttoned shirt that had become his style. He was dressed in a turtleneck and plain pants. Only his fancy sunglasses gave him away. He smiled at Hillary and me in the back seat and climbed in next to Dad. As we merged into traffic, I could see my mother's eyes looking at us in the rear view mirror, which I took to be a third warning to stay quiet about Paul's ear. For a few seconds, there was silence, and then Hillary blurted out, "Paul, how many ears do you have?" Paul, whose sarcasm had gotten him booted out of 8 deluxe schools across Europe, couldn't help laughing. "I've got one ear on the side of my head and the other one stuck in my brain." Dad didn't get upset at Hillary. He was probably too busy admiring Paul's wit. Whatever vacancy was left by Paul's missing right ear must have been covered up by his hair because I didn't recall seeing it gone. I don't recall seeing it gone. Either that or I averted my gaze, which was a wise habit to form when your small aperture in the universe suddenly opened to take in the fanatical comings and goings of the Getty dynasty. It wasn't long before I would become keenly versed in how the Newsoms were connected to the Gettys and what it meant to be an extension of their family. Young Paul was the son of John Paul Getty Jr. John Paul Getty Jr., and the nephew of Gordon Peter Getty, two brothers whom my father counted as his closest friends dating back to the 1940s before they attended St. Ignatius College Prep in the city and then the University of San Francisco. St. Ignatius College Prep was, I think, on Sloat Boulevard, over by close to the shore, on the edge of San Francisco on the west side. Anyway, the two brothers, the two brothers were in the middle. The two brothers were the middle sons of oil magnate Jean Paul Getty, nicknamed Oklahoma Crude, whose five marriages included one to their mother, Helen Ann Rourke, a silent film actress who married five times herself and appeared in movies with Rudolph Valentino. Hi, Rylan Marsden. My dad would tell me that, it's funny, you're on YouTube making comment, but I can't find the chat after I come off the air. It's interesting. I never can find it. Tell me how, if you know how. My dad would tell me that John Paul and Gordon loved their father dearly, but because old man Getty was absent for such long stretches, he was more a mythical figure to his sons than an actual father. Already the richest man in the world, Getty Sr. did not stop grabbing for more. He stretched his empire from the Oklahoma oil fields to a barren patch near the border between Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, where he proceeded to extract 16 million barrels of crude a year. Quote, the meek shall inherit the earth, but not its mineral rights, end quote, he was reputed to have said. Well, I'm not sure. I think you have to also screen record at the same time as you're doing live. Oh, interesting. Maybe that's what I should do. Live. That's okay. I know. I write live too, and then it always auto corrects to LIFE. Anyway, this is Getty Sr., he hopped from his 15th century castle on the Italian coast to his 72-room mansion in Surrey, England, to his ranch in Malibu. The money he sent to his ex-wives furnished a comfortable but hardly extravagant lifestyle for his children. As a result, John Paul and Gordon did a lot of their growing up at the three-story Newsom house on Jefferson and Baker Streets, just down from the Palace of Fine Arts in the Marina District. But there, the Getty boys found a different sort of rearing. My grandfather, William Boss Newsom, and Grandma Christine made sure that my father and his five siblings attended Mass every day and went to school with starched collars and cuffs, polished shoes, and packed lunches. When the family sat down at the dinner table on Sunday evenings over a big lamb roast, John Paul and Gordon would often sit down with them. The boss, quote, boss, capital B, who presided over things with a spirit my father described as generous and enlightened, led conversations about politics, race, and economic disparity, and civilization's ill treatment of the environment, and made clear that at his table, a girl's opinion would be given every bit as much weight as a boy's. The Getty brothers did not address my grandfather as Mr. Newsom. They called him Boss instead. Boss, let me ask you a question, Gordon would say. The boss did not want for his own legend, having run away from home at 13. His mother was too bossy, he said, and hopped the rails to Arizona, where he joined a boxcar poker game that ended with one player murdering another. My grandfather took a job with the railroad, learned the construction trade, and returned to San Francisco to build houses. This is very interesting. What's the book called? It is called Young Man in a Hurry, a Memoir of Discovery by Gavin Newsom. My grandfather took a job on the with the railroad, learned the construction trade, and returned to San Francisco to build houses. It is interesting, isn't it? Atop the landfills of the Marina District. In his middle years, he opened a wholesale flower business with the Zappatini family. Zappettii, who had cornered the market on chrysanthemums, which had become required etiquette at mob funerals from San Francisco to Chicago. Chrysanthemums are you're welcome. The chrysanthemums are French by French custom are only for funerals. So when you bring flowers to a as a guest to somebody's house and they're French, don't bring chrysanthemums. Even my dad, who was Shanghainese, he knew that. And somebody gave us chrysanthemums one time, a pot of them, and my dad put them way in the back yard on a pedestal and never watered it. Oh well. The way my dad told it, says Gavin Newsom, the Getty boys were practically his sixth and seventh siblings. They venerated my grandfather long after those Sunday salons and never stopped looking upon him as a father figure and role model. When John Paul flew off to Italy in the late 1950s to oversee the family business there, he took a framed photo of the boss with him. My grandfather then watched with great sadness as the tragedies of the Getty clan unfolded, understanding there was little he could do about it. How many subscribers do I have? I don't know. Would you like to subscribe? I could always use more. I'm trying to get more and go on to Substack as well. In fact, I think I can do a live on Substack by now. I can find out. Anyway, so my father, by contrast, altered the course of his life to provide aid, counsel and comfort to the Gettys. Yes, I will subscribe. Thank you. Rylan Marston. What city are you in, Rylan? When misfortune or scandal found one Getty scion or another, it was Bill Newsom, family consigliere, who flew off in one direction or another to the rescue. Louisiana. I've been to New Orleans once. And I've flown through too, but not stopped. Where am I? I'm in San Francisco. At first, and this guy is the governor of California now, at the moment, I think. Don't tell me I'm wrong. At first, Bill Newsom, he did this out of devotion to his best friends, John Paul and Gordon, but later he would serve the Gettys in an official capacity as one of the lawyers overseeing the family's $4 billion trust. It pained my father to see John Paul become the first of the siblings to succumb to the disquiet that would trouble far too many Getty men. In Rome during the 1960s, John Paul found himself separated from his moorings from San Francisco and his closest buddies and brother Gordon. In no time, well, I've never been there and I've been to a lot of places. Yeah, I've been to a lot of places too. And I've only been to New Orleans. I had soft shell crab there. They were so good, but that's because I like seafood so much. And now they're being eaten out of the environment, unfortunately. So that's not a good thing either. Um, anyway, back to this man. In no time, this is Bill Newsom. Bill Newsom. In no time, it seemed to my father he had assumed a whole other persona. John Paul found himself. Oh, this is for John Paul. John Paul grew his hair long, dressed in hipster garb, and showed up at late night parties with his new pal, Mick Jagger. The transformation splashed across the tabloids of Europe. Yes, they are. Oh, God, Australia. That's a good idea. It's a dead of winter over there. I've been to Australia in the winter, their winter, our summer. Oh my God, it was cold. They broke a cold record the day I arrived in Melbourne and Sydney. They were cold days. They were like, I think it was like 13 degrees Fahrenheit or something. Oh my God. And there was no snow. So it was super cold. It was super cold. Super cooling is what we call it. Anyway, so The transformation of John Paul, splashed across the tabloids of Europe, was hard to behold. His wife Gail, the debutante daughter of a San Francisco judge, no longer recognized him. In an effort to repair the breach, my father flew to Rome and back in a shuttle diplomacy that failed to bring the two parties together. John Paul and Gail separated and then divorced, and this put a bitter distance between him and his four children, especially his oldest son, Queensland. Queensland, I've been there. Queensland. I think Queensland is where Ayers Rock is. It's called Uluru Mountain now. I don't know. Anyway, John Paul and Gail separated and then divorced, and this put a bitter distance between him and his four children, especially his oldest son, redheaded Paul. John Paul was too busy courting Talitha Paul, P-O-L, a Dutch model crowned by the tabloids as, quote, one of the most beautiful women in the world, end quote, to mend relations with his kids. He and Talitha married and flew off to Marrakech, where they developed a fondness for heroin. Oh, when a massive overdose took Talitha's life in 1971, a grieving John Paul exiled himself to Wormsley, a 2,700-acre country estate in Buckinghamshire, England. Next to Sydney. Okay, that's on the east coast over there. Yeah. Buckinghamshire, England, where he hung up the framed photo of the boss. He became a proud citizen of Britain and then underwent a second transformation. Hi, Icon 28. That's a great name. Icon. He became a proud citizen of Britain and then underwent a second transformation into one of England's most storied philanthropists. Hello, Zom, giving away tens of millions of dollars to striking miners and needy children and other righteous causes. He befriended Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and grew to love the game of cricket, hosting epic matches at his estate, soaking in the scene with Jagger and playwright Harold Pinter. I've heard of all these names. His willingness to part with so much of his wealth would earn him a knighthood from the Queen. Sir Paul Getty. Hi, Evie, is Andrew. His causes, however, did not extend to his son Paul. So he was a philanthropist, meaning he gave away money, but he didn't give it to his son Paul, who kept searching for a father figure. The boy had been living in Italy with his mother Gail, hanging out with young models and leftists, setting fire to his boarding school, and generally earning a reputation as a world-class misanthrope. Then, on a summer night in 1973, young Paul was walking the deserted streets of Rome at 4 in the morning when a big white car pulled up and out jumped four burly men. One hit him with the butt of a pistol, and the other covered his nose with a chloroform-soaked cloth. Hours later, when they took off his blindfold, Paul could see that he was caught in the toe of the boot of Italy, a grim land cursed by banditry. So began a 5-month ordeal in which some of the Getty clan, including those who held the purse strings, entertained the notion that little Paul, the family mutineer, had staged his own kidnapping. The demanded ransom was $17 million, a pittance to his grandfather. My father, whose role as consigliere to the Getty family in times of turmoil came with no salary, jumped into service. First, he flew to England to consult with the boy's father, John Paul. Then he flew to Rome to consult with the boy's mother, Gail, whom he'd been close to most of his life. He thought of calling Grandpa Getty ensconced in his castle, but the old man had already issued a statement to press. I don't believe in paying kidnappers. I have 14 other grandchildren, and if I pay 1 penny now, then I'll have 14 kidnapped grandchildren. Summer and fall passed with no deal. Each new call from the kidnappers laid down a different demand. The voice on the phone was now insisting on $5 million paid in very small notes. My father wasn't sure how to read their dithering. It was either evidence of a gang that couldn't shoot straight or another indication that Paul, a trust fund baby locked out of his trust fund, was in on the stunt. The Italian attorney hired by the family, who'd been consulting with my father, told the kidnappers that $5 million was out of the question. A friend of the boy's mother is here from America with $100,000, the attorney said. That's our offer. For $100,000, the voice said, we'll send you a photo of the boy missing an arm or leg. The voice hung up. Paul would later make the cover of Rolling Stone and recount the harrowing details of his captivity. The kidnappers, who were part of the Calabrian mafia, threw him into a cave and tied him to a stake in the ground. As he lost track of time, he was able to tell from the resolve in their voices that a decision about his fate had finally been made. They untied him, made him face the cave wall, shoved a cloth into his mouth, and told him to bite down hard. They said it wouldn't hurt. They sliced off his right ear and a blood-soaked lock of his hair and put them in a plastic bag accompanied by a ransom note. They mailed the package to one of Italy's biggest dailies and awaited word from the Gettys. What the kidnappers failed to account for was a national mail strike that was postponing deliveries by weeks. By the time a reporter opened the package, the ear no longer resembled an ear. This is Paul's first ear, the note read. If within 10 days the family still believes that this is a joke mounted by him, then the other ear will arrive. When the cops showed the ear to Gail, she recognized her son's freckles. My father helped with the logistics of collecting and delivering the 2.9 million in ransom money. As it ended up, the oil tycoon would contribute 2.2 million to free his favorite grandson. This was the maximum amount that was tax deductible. Paul was let go with a large bandage on his head and hitchhiked his way back to Rome. Driving to the toy store that day with Paul is among the earliest memories I have of our close relations with the Gettys. My sister and I were far too young to have the least idea of what Paul had lived through, but we sensed that our father was trying to ease his wound. He was just 17, a boy who had been carrying a Mickey Mouse comic book under his arm when the kidnappers stole him from his life. I wish I could recollect something from our roaming the toy aisles, but I can't. Neither can Hillary. Paul returned to Europe and underwent a series of operations to reconstruct his ear. At 18, he married Gisela Martine Zacher, a German film actress who had a child named Anna. This was interpreted as an act of defiance by the oil baron, who apparently did not approve of early marriages for his grandchildren. He promptly wrote Paul out of his will. Paul would later respond to that disinheritance by adopting Anna as his own child in a civil court proceeding presided over by my father. By then, Paul and Gisela had added a son named Balthazar to the mix. Paul found solace in fatherhood and the study of Chinese history, but the past would not let go of him. At age 25, after consuming a mixture of Valium, methadone, and alcohol, he suffered a stroke that left him quadriplegic and nearly blind. Though he could no longer speak except for grunts and moans, he was determined to keep living as full a life as possible. I'd see him out with my father at a North Beach restaurant or at the annual Getty get-together in Lake Tahoe, where he found an inventive way to ski the slopes again. He was able to communicate a whole language with his eyes and show his children the world before dying at the age of 54. My window on the Gettys would serve up many lessons of a realm I could see and touch but never hold, but none was more vivid than Paul's absolute insistence on affirming life no matter the circumstances. It's very interesting. That was chapter 2. Next week, we will read part of chapter 3 on page 41. So, this was great. I hope that you all have a great evening. My goal is to get people to do a good thing during the day. I'm a little late tonight. I came early in the morning in the past. But now I'm just saying, okay, do something good. Do something good. And since I can't record these, I suppose I can't record these. I don't know. I'll try to post the comments next time, and then that way it'll be recorded on the video. Okay, it was nice talking to you all, and I hope you have a great evening. Okay, old Kinderhook.